Hello, everyone's Forest Focus. As Nottingham Forest are officially predicted to make it to the Champions League by Opta next season, we'll discuss that and an updated development of the City ground and preview the FA Cup tie against Exeter City in the company of, first of all, Emily Anderson. Good morning. How are you doing?
Very good, thank you. Nice to be on, Matt.
Good. Good to have you back with us. Back after a break, Mikey Clarke. How are you?
Yeah, back to full fitness. I'm back now. It's good to be back. It's been a few weeks, hasn't it, since I was on? So yeah, good to see you all.
Good to see you. A celebrity in Manila in his little world there. It was
That
interesting to
far.
see all those videos you sent. So you got a hero's welcome, didn't you?
Did, yeah. Lovely people over there. I'm trying to get them to support Forest, but I'm just sort of working on that one. But yeah, I enjoyed it. I was there for 2 weeks, but I did keep track of everything. Obviously, watch the Forest games and listen to you guys. So I'm up to speed with everything.
Good. We convert New Zealand. We'll convert the Philippines next. Don't worry about it. A debutant was joining us as well in Forest fan and Guardian cricket writer Ali Martin. Ali, good to have you with us. How are you?
Yeah, good. Thanks, Matt. Yeah, thanks for having me. It's what am I, a January signing, or is this am I just off the bench for the cup? I don't know. Who knows?
We can sign you outside, Johnny. You're a free agent technically, so we can push the deal through. So yeah, good to have you with us. Tell us a bit about why you're a Forest fan, Ali. Since you're a new guest, is this a family thing or something you fell into? How did it come about?
I mean, it's a question I've asked myself on a few occasions over the last 30 odd years. But yeah, I am youngest of four boys in a Forest family. Born in Nottingham. We moved to Cambridge when I was quite young. But my eldest brother James, he's kind of, I'd say, sort of European Cup vintage. He was going along as a nipper when Forest were in their pomp. Probably the cup run in '91 was when it kind of first sparked my imagination, but it was really the Frank Clarke era. Got along to my first game as a birthday present when I was 14. To the City ground, which was Forest 1, West Ham 1. We'd just beaten Sheffield Wednesday 7-1 the week before. So I went to my first game thinking, we're going to trounce this lot. But in the end, we had to scramble a point with Stan Collymore getting an equaliser. And then, and I also went back to university in Nottingham, which was kind of the Paul Hart era. So, and that was really cool. Obviously, the club at the time didn't have a pot to piss in money-wise, but that great academy, that sort of generation that Paul Hart brought through, Jenners, Prutton, Reed, Marlon Harewood up front. It was that was a pretty cool time. The depths of despair, that Yeovil semi, back in that League One playoff, I was in the ground for that one. In fact, as I said to you, I was gutted that Prutz wasn't on this one because I wanted to ask him about that red card. But yeah, it's been, and then in recent seasons, I've had friends saying to me, "Oh, you've piped up. You're a Forest fan now," and I'm like, "Well, I always have been. I've had very little to shout about for the last 20 years." But we're back and absolutely loving this season from afar, and excited to chat about it to some fellow Forest fans rather than my mates who just glaze over when I bring up the topic. So yeah, all good.
I don't think I've asked you this before. I mean, I know Ali through cricket writing. I used to do it for the Post. And I've just fell into that and blagged my way through it for 5 years, knowing barely enough to get by. How did you get into cricket writing? How did you end up at the Guardian?
Blimey, there's a dog that's objecting to that somewhere in the background.
Freddie the dog.
I mean, I went on an Ashes tour in 02-03 as a punter. Did the full tour around Australia, which was incredible. England got absolutely marmalised, but it didn't really matter at the time. That Australian team was so good. Came back from that and went to university, studied journalism, originally to go into news, but then ended up doing some shifts at the Sun, ended up sort of on the sports desk, and then carved out a little niche in cricket in that respect, and then started to pick up tours and what have you. And then 2015, which is now 10 years ago, I can't believe, got a job at the Guardian as their news reporter. And sort of over time in the last couple of years, I've moved up to correspondent. So yeah, follow England home and away with the cricket. It does mean I've got a sort of limited bandwidth for sport. A lot of it's taken up by cricket, which is obviously 3 formats: international, domestic, men's, women's, politics, news. It's a lot to take in, and so I guess in that respect, the kind of I've just enjoyed watching Forest as a fan, not getting too deep into it. I must say, I have been listening to the podcast this season, and I'm a little bit daunted because the sort of depth and breadth of the knowledge that you get on this podcast, I feel like a complete fraud. But I'll, as I say, I'll chip in where I can.
No, Ali said he brings vibes and 1994, 1995 memories. So that's what we need. We welcome that. Don't worry about it. Right, before we get into the Exeter game, obviously the transfer window is closed, and we've been discussing it at length. So I just want to ask everyone quickly how they feel about it. Starting with Emily and Freddie. We didn't get a signing. Are you okay with that or not?
Absolutely, yeah. For me, this transfer window was all about not losing players, making sure players are signed up to long contracts, which we did with Murillo and Wood. And yet a few young additions that could be potential stars of the future, which is really nice. I really enjoyed your interview with the New Zealand chap about Tyler Binden. He sounds like a good one for the future. But yeah, I was just really pleased that the squad stayed together. And yet, in an ideal world, maybe if we could have signed a striker as backup to Wood, but understandably, it's a really difficult market to get into anyway, particularly in January. And we've got Taiwo, and hopefully Taiwo will get some minutes, which I'm sure we'll get into. So yeah, it's a really positive transfer window for me. A lot of the pundits, other fans like to take the mickey out of us for the amount of signings we've had over the last few transfer windows, but actually, this was, for me, probably one of the best because we didn't lose anyone. We know now, don't we, that a bid came in from Murillo early doors from Chelsea. We resisted that temptation and we kept hold of everyone, which is fantastic. Obviously, James Ward-Prowse has gone back to West Ham, which I never thought would, I thought it would matter if he went back, but actually he's nowhere near our starting lineup at the moment in the league. So probably the right choice for him, the right choice for West Ham. And I wish him well. He's had a couple of good games for us, but it didn't quite work for him. So all in all, I think it's been a really good January and really positive.
Yeah, I mean, I said there we didn't get any signings. Obviously, we did get Tyler Binden, and check out the interview with Jason Pine I did yesterday. Got lots of good insight on him, and we signed Joel Undala, who's gone into the academy from Man City. So sort of, I don't know if it's a glorified trial before we sign him in the summer for 4 million, hopefully. I don't know how we view that one, but we'll keep tabs on him, certainly. How do you feel about it all, Mikey?
Yeah, really good. I concur with what Emily was saying. It was a measured, calm window. And for Forest, that's quite mad because, historically we haven't had them. And I think it shows the evolution, not just on the pitch, but off the pitch of the team. So obviously I'm like everybody else. I would have loved to strengthen certainly the forward areas, particularly the striker. But then if you look at it and you take a step back, there are so many teams that are after a striker, right? So I watched the Carling Cup game yesterday between Arsenal and Newcastle. If Arsenal had a striker, someone like Isak, they'd have gone through. And they were probably going to win the league if they had somebody like that. Man United, they're playing a midfielder up front last game because they don't trust their two strikers. Even across Europe, you've got Barcelona, Lewandowski, was he 37? They need everybody needs a new striker. That's why it's so hard to get one. And I'd rather us not waste the money, that's probably the wrong phrase, but not feel forced into getting somebody in because they're not going to displace Chris Wood at the moment anyway. So I think it was the right decision. We're doing well. We do have options pretty much all over the pitch. We've just got to put Wood in bubble wrap, keep him fresh. And then in the summer, the market will open up. We haven't wasted, in commas, any money in January getting somebody in a substandard. You look at previous times when we've got people like Origi in, Ross McCormack before that. All these players we get in January to try and solve it, it never solves it. So I'm really relaxed about it. We're in a really good place. And of course, you don't want to sort of disrupt the bond that they have. So it's about bringing the right character and the right person in as well. And often you can't really do that in January because, let's be honest, teams in January only strengthen when they're in a bit of trouble or they've got an injury crisis, and they only really get people that aren't in their own team, or they pay over the odds for a player. So in a weird way, I'm quite happy we didn't do anything because we're in a good place and let's not ruin it. So let's get through to the end of the season, see where we are. And if we're in the Champions League, the level of striker we can attract at that point, when it's guaranteed, will be much higher than it can be at this stage where it's a possible probability. So yeah, I'm really happy. I'd probably give it a 7 or an 8 out of 10.
Are you worried, Ali, that we didn't or couldn't buy from a position of strength, particularly in attack, or are you happy with what happened overall?
I'm livid with the month of business that they've done. No. I'm with you guys. I'm pretty satisfied. I'm gonna dip into the world of football cliches here, and I'm going to say that I think that Danilo and Sangare coming back is like two new signings, and that's why James Ward-Prowse was released. Obviously, there's so much depth there, particularly in midfield. Yes, probably would have been nice to get a striker in to kind of compete, as has been said. Chris Wood is the main man, and so he's not going to be displaced from the first 11. I just wondered with our scouting network whether we might just pull a rabbit out the hat. Somewhere like South America, a young kind of development player that could have possibly learned alongside him. Danilo was a January signing himself, so you can get good value in January, but you've got to kind of be a bit smarter with your scouting there. I don't think you're going to buy from one of the major leagues and get good value, but I think if you can look abroad, it is possible. It does put a bit of pressure on Taiwo, and for some reason, I don't know, from what I've seen this season, I do worry a little bit that he's lost his touch, he's lost his rhythm a little bit, obviously from that first year back in the Premier League that we had. I don't know if the injuries have knocked him. I don't know if just not being a first-team regular has kind of knocked his confidence a bit. So I think they need to get some game time into him, probably through the Cup. I'd be a little bit nervous if Chris Wood got injured, but on the whole, given the retentions, given that we resisted what sounds like quite a big offer for Murillo, it's been pretty good. Plus, and then we've signed one for the future. I keep wanting to call him Tyler Durden from Fight Club. What's his name? Tyler Bindon.
Tyler Bindon.
Yeah, but good to see another Kiwi. I mean, I was out in New Zealand before Christmas and did a little piece for the paper on Chris Wood and his upbringing, and it's a little bit of an untapped market there. You kind of think, it's rugby and cricket in New Zealand, but it is actually one of the highest participation sports there. And maybe a little untapped market. So, interesting to see how he goes in the long run. I suspect it will be a little while before we see him in the first team. But on the whole, a decent January. And with our team so set and with competition for places already and a style of football that they're already locked into, there was no need to upset it. And if we're going back to my absolute heyday as a Forest fan, which was, that kind of Frank Clark era, you've only got to see what happened to Newcastle when they signed Asprilla. And, when you bring in what would be a striker that would command a first team place, that can actually, as much as you get that competition, it can cause disruption as well. So not too worried about it, but Chris Wood's got to stay fit, really.
I think that must have been Nuno's thinking, because by all indications, he didn't really want another striker. And I think that must be a big factor, that kind of Asprilla thing that Ali mentions. So obviously Taiwo is important, which kind of leads us into the Exeter game, which we should get to now. I'm sure he's going to play in that. Obviously, just in general, Exeter 17th in League One. They're in horrific form. I didn't realise the form they were in, actually. They last won a game with Oxford in the last round, which was an upset in the Championship. They last won in the league on Boxing Day against Bristol Rovers. Does that give you total confidence, Emily? Or are you a bit more worried because, it's a game under the lights and it's at their place? Are you nervous of this one at all?
No, I don't feel nervous. Not necessarily because of the opposition. It would be lovely to go on a cup run, but for me, cementing a Champions League place is first port of call. No sort of offence to Exeter. I'm still on that 7-0 win. No offence to Exeter, but I think it should be a fairly routine game for us, whereby we win comfortably with hopefully 11 changes, maybe at least 9, but maybe 11 changes. My only concern is, do you spoke to James Belshaw a couple of weeks ago on the podcast? He said when lower league teams have a big game coming up, they often lose or go on a losing streak, which they're doing at the moment. So maybe they are just working towards our game. But having said that, I still see that it's just going to be a routine game for us, hopefully. But my focus is definitely on the league. But it's a really good time to get some of those fringe players in. We're going down to Exeter. It'll be a small ground. It'll be a big, huge night for the Exeter fans, and also for the Forest fans that will go down as well. So I'm just really looking forward to the game, actually, and hopefully we come out on top and we can push on to the next round.
I'm just looking at Harrogate's results after playing Leeds. I mean, they've done all right, actually. Yeah, they're in pretty good form. So I think there is something in that, but I'm pretty confident, obviously. We'll get into our team lineups shortly. Just before we do that, a word for the Trent navigation. Where's the graphic? There's too many. Here we go. Lots and lots of good stuff coming up, including a reggae special an all-day celebration with the fantastic 7-piece band Marley Revival, plus support from DJ Roots Rock Rory. Lovely. Doors are open at 2 p.m. on Bank Holiday, Sunday the 4th of May. Caribbean barbecue and pizza open. Tickets already flying, I'm told. Go to gigantic.com. From Bridgeford to Bridgetown. There you go. That's what it'll be like. It'll be like taking Ali back to the Caribbean, covering all these cricket tours. Right, let's get into our lineups then. 2 are identical. And then myself and Emily's are slightly different, but they're all on the same theme. So we'll start with Mikey and Ali's one. We've got Carlos Miguel in goal, De Silva Moreira right back, Bolly, Morato, Toffolo, and Moreno across the rest of the back 5. Yates and Dominguez in midfield, Jota and Sosa in behind Taiwo Awoniyi. Hopefully people didn't notice the seamless editing there, because I got the graphic wrong, like I always do. Right, Mikey, just talk us through your thinking, and then we'll pick out some names. I'll get Ali's thoughts as well. But why are you going with that team?
Yeah, I think for me, I loved the way we played the last game against Brighton with a back 5, and I just think the first 20 minutes, and I understand what Emily was saying about, it's a game we should win comfortably, and we should, but the first 20 minutes, I think they'll probably chuck the kitchen sink at us with a lot of crosses into the box, and we just can't afford to go 1-0 down. That might be a little bit sticky then. So I would start with a back 5, and I'd start with roughly how we lined up against Luton. So bring Toffolo back, change the fullbacks. I think if Zach Abbott was fit, I'm not sure he is, although I did see him in a video that Forest did around Dubai. I'd probably have him on the bench. So I'd start those 3, Morato, Bolly and Toffolo, and then just rotate again. So Dominguez and Yates in midfield, and then Jota and Sosa in behind Taiwo. I think it freshens it up. I think you're giving minutes to players that are going to be really, really important for us in the running. And I think it's the ideal opportunity to play certain players that haven't featured much. So the goalkeeper, for one, for example, we need to see more of what he's about. We went out the other cup competition. I think we hopefully stay in this one a little bit longer and he gets a run. Alex Moreno hasn't started a game, for example, for a long time. We know what he can bring. So get him up to speed as well. And of course, we've been talking about Taiwo. The only way he's going to sharpen up and be ultra effective in the minutes that he has in the Premier League is by getting minutes under his belt. So this is a great opportunity for them and a great opportunity for a load of these lads really to stake a claim to be either pushed for the first team or at least be sort of first change. And that team on paper, is pretty strong and should deal with Exeter, I think, pretty comfortably. But I do think the first start of the game might be a little bit tricky, hence the back 5. But that was my thinking anyway. Freshens it up. And obviously we've got a massive game after that away at Fulham, where I'd probably make 11 changes to that, to be honest. But yeah, that's my thinking, Matt.
I suppose, Ali, the midfield is always the thing that's most discussed in our team. Yates and Dominguez are perfectly good choices. I suppose the question is, do you give Danilo and Sangare minutes? I know it was debated by the Martin family selection panel. Where you landed on this in the end, did you?
Well, do you know what? So the Martin family selection panel was my brother James and his partner Becky, and those two go every week. And I submitted my team to you, and then yes, suddenly the debate reopened, but it was too late. My team was in. Yes, Danilo and Sangare, that would be the one area. And we, as I said earlier, we're flush for options in midfield at the moment. But with those two coming back, yes, there probably is a case actually to get some miles into their legs. Equally, Ryan Yates deserves his chance to lead the team out, as he's done so well whenever he's been called upon. And with Dominguez, you probably get that little bit of extra creativity potentially there in the midfield as well. So pretty easy on it. And I do know that there'll be, the superstars will be on the bench. The first team will be there to be called upon if suddenly something backfires on Forest. It's interesting what Emily said about the cup run and Champions League. I mean, yes, of course, the Champions League is the priority. I would still love to see a cup run. I do think, there is something about a team getting on a run in all competitions that they're in, that one can bleed into the other if your squad can cope. And looking at the team that myself and Mikey put out here, it looks like we've got that covered because, as has been said, that's a pretty good second team there. I did go back into history. I looked up the 78-79 season and I try and see how many games that those guys played. John Robertson played 62 games in all competitions, and he was partial to a cigarette and a beer after. I know the games come on leaps and bounds. I don't get too worried about trying to preserve players just for the league. But equally, Exeter City away, third in the Premier League, play 17th in League One. I don't see a reason to pull the trigger on first team players in the cup just yet. The deeper we go into it, the allure of Wembley, potentially ticking off the one box that the great Cloughie couldn't quite tick off in his time at Forest, that would be pretty special. But Champions League first, but at some point I imagine the first team will start turning out in the cup if we can overcome this game.
Yeah, momentum's useful. As we record this, it's 2 years ago today that we beat Leicester 4-1 when we were absolutely flying under Steve Cooper. And I think that cup run did bleed over. Maybe this one's slightly different at this stage because we're playing different teams. But I think Ali's right. We'll kind of merge into something if we keep going, if we get past this one. Let's put up Emily's team next, and I'll read it out, and then she can talk us through it. And if she wants to backtrack on any of these, because she says she sent me these with that, under time pressure, under duration, under duress. So let's see what she says. Carlos Miguel in goal, Nico Williams right back, Bolly and Morato centre backs with Alex Moreno left back, Yates and Dominguez in midfield, Jota and Sosa on the wings with Anderson in behind Taiwo. Talk us through it, Emily.
So first of all, it was a very rushed team, but do you know what? I'm going to stick to my guns here. Clearly a lot of changes in this team that the other lads have got. So Awoniyi replacing Wood, Carlos Miguel in goal. And I guess the only ones really to talk about for me, I've gone for a back four to give obviously Moreno minutes on the left. Mikey talked about him. Even though he's not featuring in the team at the moment, you can still see he's really enjoying his time at Forest with his fist pumps at the end of the game to the A block when we win. And Nico Williams, I actually hadn't thought of Morara, but actually Nico for me needs to be in most teams, and he's got so much energy, hasn't he? So that's the reason why he's in. Yates quite rightly deserves that spot in midfield for a game like this, and I'm sure he'll captain the side beautifully. Jota and Sosa we've talked about, and Dominguez. And I guess the reason I've gone for Anderson is because it'd be quite nice to see him in that role, because obviously in the Premier League, Morgan Gibbs-White has cemented the 10 role, and I know they can switch between the 8 and the 10, but it'd be quite nice to see how he performs there. We've talked about Danilo and Sangare. Yes, they need minutes, but I would rather see how the game progresses against Exeter. And if we do comfortably maybe go three goals up, maybe give them some more minutes towards the end of the game. But I just feel like, why would we want to risk them getting injured again in what could be a gritty cup tie against a lower league side who are going to be fighting for their lives in that game? Like Mikey said, they're going to come out firing on all cylinders. And what we don't want is for those players that are coming back from injury to maybe pick up a niggle. That would be a total disaster. And yeah, going on a cup run would be fantastic. And I believe with any of the lineups we put out, we should be able to beat Exeter, who are struggling in League One. But as we always say with the FA Cup, you never know. You never know. The joy of the FA Cup, the magic of the FA Cup might be behind Exeter that night. But obviously, I want Forest to win, as I do every game. And I think with that lineup, we could and we should.
Excellent. We'll just go on to my team, and then we'll move on to the Champions League stuff that I wanted to talk about. So my team is 3-4-3. I mean, it could be a back five. They're all pretty similar, but I've got Miguel in goal, Bolly, Morato and Toffolo as centre backs, De Silva, Moreira and Moreno as the wing backs, with Yates and Danilo in midfield, and then Jota and Sosa in support of Awoniyi. I played Danilo because it's a big gap between games, and I just wonder about just rhythm. Pep Guardiola always bangs on about rhythm, but I wonder if it's worth him playing 45 or 60 minutes against Exeter to build up some, minutes and rhythm. Bring Sangare on because he looks like he needs more than he did actually when he came on. So that was what I would do. Poor old Nico Dominguez is always the unlucky one, or Ryan Yates. I think Ryan Yates will playing and captain the team. He was really good against Luton, and I think Nuno has that trust in him. So yeah, that's my team. Anyone got any thoughts on it? Anyone want to tear me down before we move on at all?
Only just a quick question from me. I think we've all gone pretty much for the same front three, albeit in slightly different formations, Sosa, Jota and Taiwo. Would you even take someone like a Chris Wood or a Morgan Gibbs-White or an Anthony Elanga? Or would you just say, here's a couple more days, get yourself ready for Fulham? And the reason I ask that is just thinking of potential scenarios where you unleash them and whether it's worth the risk or not. Because in my head, I don't think I'd even take them. I think I'd just say, wrap yourself up, get yourself ready for Fulham. We should just have enough on the bench anyway. But I'm open to the debate. So, you talked about bringing Sangare on. Would you even have the rest of the first team there, as Ali was saying, Matt? Or would you kind of pad it out with people like Zach Abbott and people like that instead?
No, I would. I mean, I don't actually know who's underneath them. Obviously, Zandala maybe comes in, but I think it'd be a terrible shame to go out of the cup and not have them on the bench. I think we want to get through and have them in reserve. Ideally, Chris Wood doesn't need to come on and Gibbs-White doesn't need to come on. But there are big gaps between the games as well. It's like an international break if they don't play, which in a way is good. But I think it's just momentum. For me, that's what I would do. I would have Chris Wood and Gibbs-White in reserve. I wouldn't start them, but I'd be gutted. I wouldn't be gutted if we went out because it's all Champions League for me. But if we went out without having them on the bench and we had who would even be on the bench? I can't think who would the reserve forwards be. Who's in the academy? They're all on loan, aren't they? So, yeah, that's my thinking.
It would be a mix. Like for the Luton game, there was a mix, wasn't there? Of because Elanga came on, didn't he, and Hudson-Odoi and Chris Wood. But maybe give a couple of them the day off. But I agree with you, Matt. We don't want to be going out of an FA Cup game against the League One side because although yes, it won't affect our league position, it might affect dressing room morale. So actually, let's have the big guns on the bench just in case we need to unleash them. But hopefully we won't need to. But yeah, I'd feel happier having Elanga and Chris Wood certainly on the bench to come on if it's a tight game on Tuesday night.
Ali's got the deciding vote then, because I wouldn't have them anywhere near it. I'd have them at home in bed with a cup of hot chocolate. What do you think, Ali? Would you have them? Yeah.
I've got to say, I think after this warm weather training that they've had in the UAE, I think some of the lads deserve to get down to Devon, bit of sea air, bit of cold, fresh, maybe a bit of clotted cream, that kind of thing. No, I would have them in reserve. I think if it, as has been said, if you were to go out and not have those options to come on in the event of Exeter, taking the lead and then holding firm under siege from Forest, you kind of want those guys to come off the bench. I think actually that Tamworth game that Tottenham had kind of highlights that in a way that you kind of probably do need that insurance policy. And I don't know, it's one extra night and day on the road, but these guys are pros and they have had a good break since the Brighton game. So I'd take them along, stick them on the bench, and then call upon them if needed.
Yeah, I was going to reference the Tamworth game actually because they brought Son and Madison and Kulusevski on and still only just scraped through. You just don't know what happens in these games, especially away games, even more so than at home. So yeah, that would be my thinking. One other quick point as well. I saw Callum Hudson-Odoi was photographed in training. So if he's in full training, that's great news. Obviously, wouldn't play him in this one, but he's going to be massive going into the Fulham game and the rest of the season. Right, let's talk about the Champions League then. Obviously, we've discussed it at length, but we've always been the underdogs. No one's really seemed to believe we're going to do it. And I read an article on Opta today, having seen some stats predicting that we'll get in the Champions League. So I'll put the stats up for that first, but just an extra bit of info around getting the fifth place into the Champions League. This is a graphic saying it's now 99.5% certain that England will get the extra place for topping the table of UEFA coefficient. So it'll be us and Italy at the moment. So top five should get into the Champions League, which is massive. When you look at the graphic that I'll put up here, and I'll just explain it for people. Projected chances of finishing the top five as of yesterday. Liverpool is 100%. I don't know if that statistically means they could lose every game or not and still get in. I don't think so, but the supercomputer says 100%. 99 for Arsenal, 82 for City. And then it's got us in fourth place, 48% chance of finishing in the top four, and crucially, 69.7% chance of finishing in the top five. And then it goes down with Chelsea are virtually level with us, and then Newcastle are projected with a 37% chance of finishing top 5. Bournemouth 33. Interestingly, Aston Villa's only 5%. I thought they might be higher. Newcastle got through to the Carabao Cup final as well, which I hope is a distraction because that means everything to them. I heard Alan Shearer say he'd lose every game in the Premier League to win the Carabao Cup. So I don't know if that's a factor at all. So anyway, you can see finally we're projected to win, and pundits are starting to get in the top 5, and pundits are starting to believe as well. How do you feel about that, Ali? I think you said to me nothing like getting ahead of ourselves. So are you still a one game at a time man, or are you a believer?
I mean, I'm obviously a believer, and I'm also wary of upsetting the supercomputer. Having watched the Terminator films, we want to stay on side with these guys because it can backfire. Champions League. It's going to be an interesting one because if we do get there, and if we don't win the title, which I haven't ruled out, but is probably unlikely, I'm going to have to do a complete backflip on sort of 20, 30 years of telling supporters of other clubs that get into the Champions League without winning the league that it doesn't count, that you shouldn't be there. It should just be a tournament for champions. I'm bracing myself for that. But I don't know. It is a tricky run we've got coming up. I think everyone accepts that. But there is confidence in the way this team's playing at the moment to pick up enough points, even in that tough run, and hopefully finish the season with a bit of a flourish. So, it'd be great to be back at the City Ground. I think my last European game there was Malmo at home in '95. I think Brian Roy scored the winner that night, and with a nice flick on from Jason Lee. So it'd be great to bring back European nights at the City Ground. That would be incredible.
One other slide to show. This is playing around on Twitter. Temp's put in our WhatsApp chat. I don't know where it comes from, but it's good to see. Maybe Football Rankings was a website. Champions League projected pots. We'd be the lowest ranked team, obviously having not played in it for years, but we've got us in pot 4 alongside the likes of Athletic Bilbao and Celtic. And then you look at the other pots, obviously all the way up to Real Madrid and Barcelona in pot 1. Pretty mad to see, isn't it, Emily? But it looks good if it happens.
Yeah, when Temp sent this round, I couldn't quite believe what I was seeing, actually. But yeah, that's great, and I'm happy with this being the lowest ranked club. I don't really care about that at all. And I'm still, I know we've talked about this for weeks, but my mind is still blown that we're even talking about this, and that the supercomputer predicts that we have a 69.7% chance of making it into the top 5, which will probably get us a Champions League spot. But here we are sat in 3rd in the table. And actually, it's crazy. And I think if we just keep doing the Nuno thing of making sure that we're really hard to beat, we don't go into a game expecting to win. We go into every game with the same mentality. And to quote Erling Haaland, I think our team are humble. We've got no big heads in there. We've got a fantastic team spirit. And yes, we've got a really difficult run coming up, but there is no reason why we can't beat some, if not some of the teams, grind out some draws. Remember, they've all got to play each other as well. So I'm confident that we're going to have a good run in towards the end of the season. And I think no matter where we finish, whether it's a Champions League spot, whether it's a Europa League, whether it's Conference League, what a fantastic season. And we'd never have predicted this at the beginning of the season. So the very fact that we're even talking about projected Champions League pots is incredible, and it's such a great time to be a Forest fan. I remember the European nights of the 90s as well, going down to the City Ground, and I heard the Champions League theme tune last week, and just the thought of hearing that at the City Ground, it just gives you goosebumps, doesn't it? So hopefully, fingers crossed, we'll be hearing it.
I'm speaking to Brian Laws tomorrow, and I'll ask him this question as well. I'll ask Mikey. I'll ask him it now. What about the switch between zero expectation, hope, belief to full on, as it gets closer, expectation? This is the first kind of whiff of it. If we get within 10 games, 5 games, do you worry about pressure impacting the players or not?
No, not at all. And the reason why is a little bit of what Emily said as well. The expectation for us this season wasn't to even have these conversations. This conversation should take place in about 5 years' time, potentially, if the graph is going the way it's going. This is uncharted territory for this group of players, and they're loving it and they're thriving on it. So pressure for me is when you're 3rd bottom with 3 games left, or 4th bottom, or when you need to win to stay up, or when you need to go to a horrible ground and somehow force a victory to keep your heads above water and mean that people don't lose the jobs at a football club. That's pressure. You know, pressure for a team that isn't expected to do anything like this. Just enjoy it. Just enjoy the ride, and the players are enjoying it. And even when they get a setback and a kick in, like they had at Bournemouth, you know, there's nobody's down in the dumps. They come back and put on an absolute clinic that I witnessed on Saturday. Absolutely unbelievable. They'll be talking about that for years, that performance. So I'm not saying they're not going to feel the pressure because they're human beings, but I don't think if we're in this situation with 5, 6, 7 games to go, I don't think it would change the mentality at all. I think they're loving what they're doing. They're a good bunch of mates by the look at it, and they'll live and die together. They'll either qualify together or they won't, and there'll be no blame there. They'll just keep pushing. So I think enjoy the ride as a supporter. I just think it's mad, this conversation. So I keep trying to take the emotion out of it and think, do you know what? If I didn't support Forest and I looked at this, what would I say about Forest chances? And I'd probably say about 7 out of 10, which is what the crazy supercomputer is predicting. So because you're in it and you see it, you get nervous. But all I'd say is just enjoy the ride. And if we're still having this conversation in a month's time or 6 weeks' time, because we've got all those teams to play that beat us, haven't we, in the next few weeks? If we can flip that tide, and then we've got a load of teams at home, and then you're in the running. If we're still having this conversation, then maybe I'll go, oh God, do you know what we can do? We can do this. I do think we can do it, but what's the worst that can possibly happen now? That we lose, I don't know, 6, 7 games and finish, what, 8th? You'd probably still get Europe then, won't you? So anything's a bonus. But yeah, as fans, let's dream for the stars. But to go to your question, Matt, the players won't feel it. They're loving every second of this. And whatever happens, this season has been unreal. And, you know, all credit goes to them and the manager. So as fans, let's just dare to dream, I guess, is the corny thing to say. But whilst it's possible, it's possible. And 70%, 7 out of 10, take those odds any day.
Excellent. Right. Final 10 minutes or so, just wanted to rattle through a few other bits of news that are floating around. The VAR panel, the independent, mysterious VAR panel, ruled that Milenkovic's goal v Southampton should have stood. It was wrongly ruled out. I'll ask you 2 questions, Ali. Any thoughts on that? And also VAR in general, because you cover a sport in cricket, which has a lot of technology involved. Is it different because probably cricket rules are more definitive than football rules? They're less open to interpretation. So what's your view on that goal and VAR in general?
Well, firstly, the goal itself didn't cost us, which probably means you can be a bit more zen about it now. I'm always instinctively on the side of the officials, and this, I know that sounds like I don't know. It sounds a bit weak, but I just, I'm not a huge fan of VAR in football. One of the things I loved about football was the lack of technology, just the sort of purity of the game that's the same from Hackney Marshes up to the Premier League. And what it has shown is that even when you introduce technology, a lot of it still comes down to human interpretation. And in that respect, I'm pretty easy about it. I mean, for example, last season when we had the issue with Stuart Atwell and the club, obviously, went nuclear on it, sent that tweet out. It found myself in the minority of Forest fans. I found that pretty embarrassing, to be honest. I'm more from the Brian Clough school of, let the referees get on and do their job. I don't believe in the conspiracies that fly around amongst, certain sections of certain support bases for certain teams. I just don't see it personally. You're right. In cricket, there is probably a bit more cut and dry, but it's not, even cricket is not without controversy at times over line calls. But I like to sort of have the belief that the officials are people who are working hard to produce the best decision they can, and that there's no hidden agendas. I know people see it, and if you look hard enough, you can see it wherever you want. But I still would rather sort of retain that belief in the overall system. And yeah, I just don't like VAR. I think it's just added complications to the sport, and it's ruined a lot of pretty golden moments as well. I was always of the school of what goes around comes around, and if a decision goes against you, you can get a bad run of them, but over time they tend to even out. But I'm a little bit old school in that respect, so I appreciate it.
No, very fair, very fair. Right, a few other quick bits to get to as well. Just a quick word for home move estate agents before that. If you are a homeowner and you're living in the vicinity of Ambleside, Gampston, Beckside, or West Bridgeford, and you're looking to sell or considering to sell, then get in touch with Home Move estate agents. Basically, the houses are flying, and Ben is looking for you to get in touch. So do click on the link or put his email address in there as well. Home Move estate agents are the people for you if you're considering selling. And now's probably a good time. You want to sell in like April, March into the summer, I think. So yeah, get in touch with Ben if you would. A couple of other bits of news. The Athletic and lots of other outlets are reporting that we're going to play Senegal at the City Ground in June, which is great. And lumped in with that as well, there was a little tidbit from Danny Taylor saying the demolition of the Peter Taylor stand is expected or hopefully going to start in the summer of 2026. Emily, that's exciting news on both fronts, isn't it? I mean, I've actually never seen England play live, but if we could see it in Nottingham, that'd be fantastic.
Yeah, I've seen England play live at Portman Road randomly. I used to live in Suffolk for work, which was quite exciting. Not the Suffolk bit, but the watching England. Although Suffolk was lovely, by the way, if anyone's from Suffolk and listening. Yeah, what a great little nugget that we found out that England will be playing Senegal at the City Ground. I went and saw the under-21s, I think it was, at the City Ground last year. I think when we thumped a team 8 or 9-1, I can't remember what the score was. So that was good fun. So to see that the first team England lads will be great. And how good would it be if we could see Morgan Gibbs-White, Callum Hudson-Odoi, maybe Elliot Anderson in England shirts playing? That will make it extra special, I think. Morgan Gibbs-White surely is knocking on the door of being a regular for England, and hopefully Callum, if he's fit, and Elliot will push up into the first team squad as well. Also, the development at the City Ground, that sounds very exciting. I went on a stadium tour a few months ago, and the guy that showed us around actually sort of talked in that way, showed us where the development's going to take place and how we could be building on top of the main stand. But it's all being pushed forward. So that sounds really, really positive, because there are so many people that aren't able to get to Forest games at the moment. Capacity of just over 30,000, but people just aren't getting the tickets. So if we could maybe add 10,000, I think they're looking at, aren't they? Maybe taking it up to just over 40,000 seats. It would just make the game more accessible to more people, because there is nothing like watching your favourite team live. It's all well and good watching it on the telly, but being in the stadium is just something else.
I saw, Mikey, there's so much talk around Newcastle not moving far, moving to an adjacent site. Their fans seem quite receptive to it, a lot more than our fans were. I guess, I mean, this is really good news, and I hope it happens. I guess it's just a case of, I don't know, do you still see it when you believe it, or believe it when you see it? Sorry.
Yeah, to a degree. I think there's concrete desire for us to get there, and I think, you know, that the steps that we've made on and off the pitch this year has only increased that desire to push through, because the demand for tickets now must be insane, really. So they know they can fill it, and the owner wants to invest and he wants to see us grow. And I'm just glad that we are, as it stands, staying at the City Ground, and we can redevelop, which is great. So I'm all for it. If it happens season after next, brilliant, fantastic. You know, so by 2027, 28, something, we should have a new rock-in stand at the City Ground, probably with better facilities than every other stand that's left. So we'll have to do them after that. As for Newcastle, yeah, it's a strange one, that. I guess it probably, I'm just thinking where their ground is. It's right at the top of the city. It's quite well surrounded by infrastructure and stuff. I guess they're just, I don't know, maybe it's because, you know, they're owned by a state, aren't they? They're probably the richest club in the world, if not one of them, and they keep having to sell the players. Maybe getting the revenue in is the way forward, and everybody sort of understands that. I think I saw a stat that said that when Tottenham moved to their new ground, they were getting in about £1 million each match day at the old White Hart Lane. They're now getting about £6 million in each match day. So it is fundamentally different to have a new stadium which holds more people and they spend more. So I guess that's just a thought process behind it. But back to Forest, yeah, I mean, it just shows you the ambition and the desire to move the club on. So I'm all for it. I'm not one of these that go, oh, it'll never happen. I understand people that say that because it's been in the works for ages, but I do think there is a desire to do it. And now is the optimum time to do it. You know, we were talking about this when we were in the Championship, almost dropping to League One. We're still talking about it, and the club's in the best state now that it's been in for years. So let's press ahead and do it, and I'm sure everybody will be fully supportive of, you know, when it does eventually happen. It's just another exciting thing to look forward to.
You'll have been to cricket grounds around the world, Ali, where they'll tack extra bits on, and even in this country, Lords seems to get new bits, and Old Trafford's got a giant temporary stand. How do you feel about the future of the City ground, and also the potential? Obviously, the potential to move has gone now to Totem, but how did you feel about the whole thing, all encapsulated?
I mean, I was very anti. I've got to say, the idea of a move like that, I found that it really turned my stomach, to be honest. As you say, I'm very lucky in my job. I get to go to a lot of sporting venues around the world, and right up there is that walk from the City to Trent Bridge for work, in my case, or if it's the City ground for a game. That sporting hub there on the river, it's just an iconic setting. You know, the rowing clubs aren't there. Obviously, you've got Meadow Lane across the water, but that little hub is so iconic and so historic that to have abandoned that would have been pretty heartbreaking. But I think the club would have lost a bit of its soul if it had taken that road. Thankfully, it sounds like redevelopment is now pretty much the only option on the table, and I think that's great news. And I must admit that even this Senegal fixture, I was very surprised by it, just because of the capacity and B, the facilities. But you know, I think the City ground, certainly in recent years, has demonstrated it's got one of the best atmospheres in the country, and that would be amazing for an England game. And then for Forest, stick another 10,000 on top of that. It's not just the revenues; it's just that atmosphere. I just think it gives the team such a lift and a boost, and it's such a far cry from those pretty bleak and soulless and quiet years down in League One, where the crowd was struggling to raise itself. These days, it is a real cauldron in there, and so the idea of an expanded City ground, still with that iconic setting, the history of Trent Bridge just across the way as well. I think it's I think it's fantastic for the club. I hope the owner presses ahead with it, and it'll be strange in that period when it's being done up, but going back again to 94, 95, that was when the Trent End was being built, wasn't it? And had it up and running by the end of that season. And I think in time it deserves to have that side of the ground built up and get it to be a proper four stand stadium. I think it will look fantastic when it's done. Good stuff.
Right. Any final thoughts? Anything you want to add before we go, Emily Anderson?
No, I don't think so, actually. Oh, I'm going to the Fulham game. It's a week on Saturday, isn't it? It's my first away game of the season. I tried to get to at least one, so I'm very, very, very excited about that. And I'm taking the train down, so there'll be a few beers hopefully flowing, and we'll be celebrating another Forest win. But yeah, just enjoy the ride. You know, when we sort of reached the 40-point mark, whenever it was, back end of last year, and I thought, oh, that's it, we're safe. And I thought, oh, the pressure's off now, we can just enjoy it. But it's now a different pressure, isn't it? And I'm enjoying that pressure of, are we going to make the Champions League spots? So it turns out that as a football fan, even if you're at the top of the league like we are, there's still that awful pressure on you. So yeah, just enjoy the ride for the rest of the season. It's all going good for us. We've had so many years of disappointments and heartaches, so just enjoy it while it's good.
Good stuff. I'm going to the City game. I'm looking forward to that. I think I've missed last 2 home games, or maybe even 3. So that'll be great. That's obviously a big occasion. The last of this run before we get into the more favourable fixtures. So looking forward to that one. Mikey, anything for you before we go?
Just 1 or 2 things. Firstly, it's good to be back and talking to you guys. Feels like I've been away for ages. So trying to keep abreast of everything. Whilst I was out in Manila, I got up for the Forest games. Liverpool was 4 a.m. So if anyone can imagine, like, working, setting your alarm, getting up. Honestly, it's 30 degrees over there, but I was sweating by the end of that game. Not because of the heat, because it was just absolute carnage. I find it so nervous watching us on TV. When I'm at the ground, I'm actually mainly quite cool. So when I went to the Brighton game at the weekend and the 7-0, it was just lovely just to see us back in the flesh. I'm such a nervous watcher on TV. I can't, especially when I'm not even in the country. It's so scary.
Mikey,
yeah.
Before you go on to your next thing, at what point did you relax at Brighton? What was the scoreline when you finally relaxed?
Honestly, after about 5 minutes in the second half, and the reason why is because we're 3-0 up. And then we sat in our shape, and I said to the guy next to me, "This is brilliant. This is brilliant for Forest, because all they'll do is they'll keep chucking people forward, and we'll just hit them on the break, and it's perfect." And what happened 10 minutes later? Straight 4-0. So it was half time. I was fine because I knew what was coming. What about you?
Okay, 5-0. 5-0 was my moment. Anyway, carry on.
Just
Yeah,
thinking,
5-0, I find it relaxed.
when I saw the team sheet with one in midfield, I was pretty relaxed then. But yeah, sorry, Mikey.
that was crazy, wasn't it? No, I was talking to a few people at half time because I was chilled and relaxed, and just want to say hi to Suvik, who comes from Calcutta, who listens. So check your podcast downloads, Matt, and also John. So just great to be talking to people, connecting again after having a few weeks out of the country. So yeah, just good to be back. Thanks for asking me on.
No, there's no problem. I'm a much more nervous watcher in the ground than on TV, personally. And a shout out to all the people who get up at like 4 a.m. around the world to watch these games, because I know lots of people do. Ali, anything you want to add before we go? And are you a more nervous watcher in the ground or on TV?
Do you know what? I'm pretty zen either way these days. I just roll with it. I think, when you've had personally just the years and years of kind of misery and sort of, or just being a very average team, that I don't know, it's chilled me out properly. And I'm just loving it. I'm just loving the run basically. But the odd setback, I get a little bit nervous in games. The playoff final, which I was lucky enough to go to, that was hard to relax during that one, just given that the stakes were so high. I liked Emily's point about increasing the capacity of the City Ground just to allow people to get tickets. I tried for the Luton game, couldn't get them for the FA Cup game. That's a sellout for what is going to be a reserve team against Luton. That really tells you something about the demand and how the stadium does have to expand. And in terms of the running, just what Mikey was saying there about how Forest are going to cope with that. One thing I like about this Forest team is there are leaders throughout the team. The captain, only one player wears the captain's armband, but you see leaders in every sort of area of the pitch, and not least Chris Wood. I think Chris Wood is going to be massive for this run-in. I love his attitude. I love the way that he is got such a low heart rate and he stays so calm. And we've seen that stat this week. I haven't got it to hand, so I'm going to have to pluck it off. About he's sort of outdoing his own XG or whatever, which I'm not a big fan of the analytics in that respect. But his shots to goals ratio is extremely impressive, and that goes back to that level head. And I just hope that the other players kind of can feed off that with him and see that characteristic in him, because, at 33 years old, he's a guy that's, had been on quite a journey from a kid in New Zealand through to being a sort of Premier League goal scorer. But he stayed so remarkably level with it. And I just hope that kind of bleeds through the squad, because, it's going to be a full on run-in, but they've got the tools to do it.
I think, he's outstripping his XG by about 5.8 or 5.28, so he should have scored 11 goals.
That doesn't mean anything to me. I just think he's a brilliant goal scorer, and I genuinely think he's one of the best goal scorers I've seen since Gary Lineker. In terms of just finding that, having that awareness, the space, the cool head, and the finishing. He's not glamorous. He's not beating guys. This isn't like watching Stan the Man back in the day. Beating 5 guys and hammering it home from 30 yards. But the job he does up top, it's invaluable. It's absolute gold dust. I'm so chuffed he's got that 2-year deal as well.
Yeah. Do you know what it is? Yeah, honestly, I couldn't agree more. It's not along. Watching Arsenal last night, if they would have had Chris Wood in their team, there was a couple of crosses that came in the second half. Wood would have been there, would have tapped him in. And it just shows you, doesn't it? It's like what you said, Ali, he's calm, his interviews, and he plays that way, doesn't he? He's like, he doesn't get ruffled. His movement's not extravagant, but it's intelligent. He's not the quickest, but he always seems to have half a yard. He's just at the peak. He's like his optimum powers are there, and he is going to be massive. I totally agree. He's the key man.
Yeah, it's funny because from covering the cricket, and the New Zealand team at the moment, they are the sort of perennial overachievers, and that is built on those characteristics that they stay utterly level and neutral. And at times in my job, I kind of find it quite frustrating. You're in a press conference, you want to get a juicy line out of them, and you're trying to, and they stay so level, and it really does feed into performance. It just means if you're up and down like that, emotionally, your form's going to go with it. But it's just that absolute clarity of thought. I think he's a really impressive footballer.
This is a frivolous, pointless question. Alexander Isak's 25. If Chris Wood was 25, how much would he be worth on the transfer market?
Yeah, I mean a lot of money, a lot of money because goal scorers are like gold dust, and he is a goal scorer, and he's proved it. He's had a weirdly nomadic career, but if you actually look at his goals to games ratio, it's right up there.
Yeah, I mean, if he was 25, he'd be worth 70-80 million, I think. He's not, so it's pointless because he's 33, but it just shows the quality of the striker, I think.
But isn't it great that we've got him in his peak, and who'd have thought his peak would be in his early 30s? We're just so lucky to have him, and I echo everything Ali says. He's just a brilliant footballer, and he's so modest, and he's so calm, and how lucky are we? And one of the many reasons why I'd never be a professional footballer is that my emotions are up and down, and I'm the most nervous watcher. I'd be the most nervous player. I am the total antithesis of Chris Wood. And so, yeah, what a great guy. We're so lucky. And I meant to say as well, I've been banned from talking about Forest in the house because apparently I'm too smug. So it's really nice to get all my Forest stuff out on here. So yeah.
How was Nick at the weekend? Forest win 7-0. Leicester get their little hopes up after winning at Spurs and then get absolutely tanked by Everton. Wasn't pretty, I bet.
Yeah, we had quite a few rants actually, and I just sat and let the old man rant, and he got over it, and he even praised Forest's performance. He watched the whole game on the television, and he just said, "Wow." So even my Leicester City supporting other half was just so complimentary. Just said, "You're everything. Your team's everything I wish we were." So it's all good.
You won't know the answer to this question. Did he buy any Everton players in FPL? Do you know or not?
Yes, he did. He bought in Jordan Pickford and did quite well there because Jordan Pickford got an assist. So
and a clean sheet.
Every team that Leicester plays at the moment, he brings in a player from the opposition in the hope, I think, that he stymies them, but it's not quite working in his favour at the moment.
He got an assist after 10 seconds, didn't he? Took him 10 seconds.
And I've got Pickford, Moyes and Mikolenko, so I was watching the end for that clean sheet. And I've got Chris Wood as well, so yeah, an extra little boost on the day. Lovely stuff. Right, if you've enjoyed this, do us a favour, hit like, hit subscribe. Do consider channel membership or Patreon. You get lots of early access to recorded interviews and lots of other little bonuses, or just give us a lovely 5-star review on iTunes or Spotify. Emily Anderson, thank you very much.
Thank you, a pleasure.
Mikey Clarke, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Emily, Matt, good to see you, and good to meet you, Ali.
Ali Martin, thank you very much. A wonderful debut.
Thank you for having me. Who knows? Fingers crossed. Maybe I'll come off the bench again at some point.
I'm sure you will. Thanks for everyone's company. We did 58 minutes with not much news to talk about there, which often happens. But I enjoy these ones where it's a bit more chilled out than a transfer deadline day. Although I was feeling a bit on transfer deadline day at the end of the 2 hours. It wasn't a typical Forest one. But good to have you with us today. And if we don't see you tomorrow with Brian Laws, then hopefully we shall see you soon.